In this art history video, we'll take a closer look at Impressionism and one of its founders, Claude Monet. Monet painted with bright colors and quick brushstrokes as he portrayed the impression of an image and the effect of light on it. And as the artist Vasily Kandinsky said, this created a sense of fairy tale power and splendor. Monet was making art that broke current trends, and he was not alone in his quest to find a new way of making art. He shared new approaches to painting with his fellow art classmates in France, Paul Cézanne, Camille Pissarro, and Pierre-Auguste Renoir. And by 1874, Monet had teamed up with several other artists to form an anonymous society of artists. These artists were not just rebelling against traditional ways of making art, but also traditional ways of judging the quality of art. So who does determine the quality of art, or what is even considered art? Artists throughout time have pushed us to think about these questions and break free from traditional ways of defining art. But in France during this time, there were very specific ways of judging the quality of art, and the government largely controlled public tastes in art. Art wasn't shown openly in galleries like it is today. It was shown at the Salon of Paris, held in the Palace exhibition halls. Getting into the salon was hard. Works of art were only shown once or twice a year, and many works were rejected. The Salon valued very traditional ways of making art, in which portraits and historical, mythical, and religious themes were depicted in realistic, sober colors. And by 1863, nearly 2/3 of all artwork submitted to the Salon was rejected. These rejected artists protested. They were trying to push new ways of making art. So Napoleon III decided to let the public judge for themselves and placed their work in a separate exhibition hall that he called the Salon of the Rejected. While most viewers came only to mock the artists, the exhibition propelled the artists onto center stage, where they would soon take the lead. But Monet and the Anonymous Society of Artists had had enough of the Salon. They were determined to show their work in an exhibit of their own. And in 1874, they showed their first exhibit in the studio of the photographer and journalist called Nadar. The result? One critic declared Monet's work no more than a sketch and mockingly called the exhibit the Exhibition of the Impressionists. While many were shocked by the new style, the Impressionists struck an emotional chord with audiences, and their work would soon gain favor. And the term Impressionism stuck. It was even eventually accepted by most of the Impressionist artists themselves. So how exactly did the Impressionists break free from the traditional realistic ways of making art? They moved from the confines of the classroom outdoors and started to paint in open air. They were fascinated by how the eye could see light in nature and how images were affected by the time of day and weather. They also painted regular people in ordinary everyday events. To capture the effect of light, Monet loosened his brushstrokes and carefully selected colors. Monet also often painted his wife, Camille, who unfortunately died from cancer at the young age of 32, leaving him with their 2 young boys, Jean and Michel. While Monet was greatly affected by Camille's death, shortly afterwards he began to paint what are considered some of his best works of art. Monet continued to study the effect of light and color in series paintings, in which he painted the same image at different times of day. He showed the effect of light on color and how this could change the impression of an image. He also often painted in his gardens at his home in Giverny in France. He was a master architect for his gardens, and even imported lilies from Egypt in South America, and planted them for the scene for one of his most famous works of art. His water lilies now fill this gallery, standing over 6.5 feet tall and 40 feet wide. He even built a Japanese bridge in his garden, and painted it 17 times the very year he built it, to reflect the changes of light and weather. Later in his life, his brushstrokes became even looser and images more abstract. Slowly, he took on a more expressionist style, called post-impressionism. Monet's images also began to look a bit different around 1912, when he developed cataracts in both of his eyes. The cataracts clouded his sight and caused him to become nearly blind. Monet finally had surgery to remove the cataracts in 1923, but became increasingly depressed. In fact, Monet suffered from depression throughout his life. He even destroyed some 500 works of his art. Nevertheless, art was a refuge for Monet, and he continued to make it until the last year of his life in 1926. He even said that his only merit in life was having painted in nature, his impressions of fleeting effects. Monet painted some 2,500 works during his life and inspires us to challenge the way we think about art and make art. Now let's take what we've learned about Claude Monet and make our own art.